Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the GMC June membership meeting. After an unplanned absence / quarantine from the May meeting, I am absolutely delighted to be here as your new GMC board chair. I am Peggy Kelsey, for those of you wondering who this person is standing in front of you. I have a lot of emotions rolling around today and have been, frankly, since Greg came to see me and asked if I would step into this position. First of all, and foremost, gratitude to the GMC board for its vote of confidence in me. It means a great deal to me. Secondly, to Greg Marcus, to David Lubar, to Ted Kellner, John Daniels, Mary Ellen Stanek, and so many other previous GMC board chairs whom I deeply respect and who set great examples for me to follow. To you, Joel, for your committed leadership of the GMC, which has been on full display lately in so many ways. And to you, the GMC members, for continuing to support our organization. Next, I feel very optimistic. I am optimistic for working together under Joel's leadership. We know it can be done. Finally, a healthy dose of humility combined with absolute enthusiasm to roll up my sleeves, learn a whole lot of new things, and work with you on executing our strategic priorities. On the humility front, I recognize there may be a person or two here who might be wondering who I am and where I came from. So I'd like to kick this meeting off with a very brief introduction. As those who know me well know, I could talk about the weather for 30 minutes, so I won't be doing that. First of all, and foremost, as I stand here, I am a Wisconsinite. And occasionally, I am reminded that I have the accent to prove it. As a side note, in law school, somebody behind me after I spoke tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Wisconsin or Minnesota?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "Are you from Wisconsin or Minnesota?" And I said, "Wisconsin. How did you know?" And she rolled her eyes. So I was born and raised in Door County, one of those few people who's actually from Door County, Sturgeon Bay to be exact. And I'm married to a guy I started dating when I was 15 and he was 17, the proverbial high school sweethearts. Together we have 3 amazing children and 1 granddaughter, all of whom blessedly live in the greater Milwaukee area. Next, I am a lawyer, and I love being a lawyer. I graduated from that other Jesuit law school, Georgetown, and had a great litigation career at Quarles and Brady, working with people like Kevin Long, who I know is here somewhere. There you are. I primarily worked on cases, I tried a lot of cases in the Deep South, where I was surrounded by a lot of people who thought I was the one who sounded kind of funny. And then I took my legal practice, as we say, in-house to Modine in Racine, Wisconsin, where I worked for 16 years. Along the way, while I was at Modine, and with many thanks to Mark Money, I got an MBA from UWM. And then I started dabbling in things like global treasury and business development and corporate communications and the like before coming back to the law. And then one day, Alan Leverett reached out. And I ended up coming to WEC Energy Group about 6 years ago to put my legal and business skills to work in a whole different industry, one I knew nothing about. And with Alan and Gail Kloppa's encouragement, I became a student of a really fascinating business, and I continue to learn each and every day. And finally, just in terms of introducing myself, I am a community partner. I serve on a number of nonprofit boards, and I'm also a member of the North Shore Bank Board of Directors. I've always believed that communities are stronger when we engage together. And I also believe that I have a duty to being part of the community I want to create. I'm extending the path of my predecessor, Greg Marcus, set in motion during his tenure, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate Greg's guidance during this transition. And I will state publicly, just so he can't go back on it, he told me he'd continue to be there for me as long as I needed him. Greg's leadership, frankly, proved steadfast during a time in history that most certainly was not. And it was under Greg's leadership that we arrived here today. I'm especially excited to accept the role of implementing our new strategic plan, working with our board of directors and our entire membership to create the future Milwaukee we collectively envision. Thank you for entrusting me with this position, and I now welcome Joel Brennan to the podium. Joel.
Thank you, Peggy. Welcome. Now that both you and Greg are here, I can talk about, last time I had to perform, I think, triple duty because of your absence, and I think everybody else benefits from your presence here, as do I. So thank you and welcome. And you brought up the name of someone who's not talked about as much in this community in the last few years, of Alan Leverett from We Energies. And I would just tell you, Alan is an example of someone whose gifts continue to be felt in this community, including your presence at the GMC, your presence at We Energies. When I was at Discovery World, Alan was chair of the board there. At one point was co-chair of the board with Mike Cudahy, and all of you can understand what kind of a role that was to be co-chair with Mike Cudahy, but was really part of saving that institution and springboarding it into a stronger, better, more positive future. And that's the kind of people I think that we want to surround ourselves with in the community. And so to have that legacy and to have people like Peggy and Greg to be part of this and all of you is something that really is something to cherish. I'm excited, and I know the staff is excited to work with you. Just for a moment, however, I get the chance to honor your predecessor and to let him know what an honor it has been for me to work with you, what an honor it has been for the people here, for you to represent the Greater Milwaukee Committee. It truly has been an honor, and not just because you gave me this job, Greg. You have a vision for Milwaukee that just, it exudes itself in everything that you do, in who you are. You have risen to the challenge as the Greater Milwaukee Committee Board Chair. These have not been easy days in our community. They were not easy days over these last few years for you in your profession, in your day job. From a global pandemic to a community-wide fiscal cliff to the continued economic and equity challenges that Milwaukee has faced for 40 years. You wrestled with these major challenges. While we have a long way to go, you've helped us make demonstrable progress on these. You led the organization through a leadership change, a strategic planning process, and helped us celebrate a 75-year history, all while ensuring that loose ends were nicely tied up for Peggy to step in and continue on that journey. Our GMC staff would also like me to share their deep appreciation and gratitude for you personally. We genuinely appreciate all that we have learned from you during the past few years. You have been accessible, transparent, strategic, and open to new ideas, everything that we could have asked for. As a token of our deep appreciation, we have a gift for you. If you look up the most recent honoree on Hollywood's Walk of Fame, you'll find that Tupac got his star just last week on June 7th. However, the newest star on that is someone who we have here in Milwaukee, the movie guy. And we wanted Greg to have his own. This was created by Carmine Goglia, who works with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce as the exclusive artist for the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And this is your Hollywood star, and we want to present it to you, Greg Marcus, our Hollywood star. Yeah, now you come up.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Thanks, Joel.
Oh, nope. Apparently we're staying.
Okay. That'll work. that's really cool. Thank you, Joe. I love that. Let's see. After an unplanned absence, quarantine, I also missed the May meeting. So I had to extend it out. That seems to be my theme here, extend out a little bit longer. But I thank you for letting me come up and say a few words. I will be brief, because if I'll take credit for only one thing during my tenure, it was getting these meetings to run more efficiently, and I want to leave that record intact. I simply want to say thank you for trusting me to lead the organization the last few years through some pretty substantive changes. Typically, the chair's term ends in February, and though I was starting to feel like the house guest that overstays his welcome, it was the change in leadership from Julia to Joel and the need to complete the strategic plan that led to a short extension. Staying on as chair provided some consistency to the leadership and strategy during these times of change, and I thank you all for allowing me to finish the process. It was through this transition period and important organizational changes over the past few years that we identified Peggy as our new board chair, a leader who participated in both the hiring of Joel and as a valuable partner in the strategic planning process. We believe her professional accomplishments, her close connections to the community, and her bias toward action provide strong ingredients to help steer the future direction of the GMC. In other words, Peggy and Joel at the helm, with Peggy and Joel at the helm, we are in good hands. So once again, I say thank you to all of you, to Joel, and to the rest of the staff at the GMC who make this place run so well. It's a wonderful team. I take great pride in this organization and the positive trends we are seeing. I'm glad I said no to David Lubar, who came to me, reminded me when Joel, you talked about, or hey, Joel, you talked about the last few years. David did come to me right before because it was right in the heat of all the fun I was having in the pandemic. And he said, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I said, well, I committed and I'll do it. And probably was a good thing to do to get away from all the fun I was having at the office. So I'm really glad that I didn't take him up on that offer. It was clear at our 75th anniversary celebration that the GMC has been and will continue to be inexorably linked to the success of Greater Milwaukee. And as Joel wisely reminded us, and Peggy said it again, it can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. I'm going to provide a handful of GMC initiative updates now before we get on to the presenters today. Our MK United team is working closely with the MLK Economic Development Corporation on the launch of the pilot for the Community Investment Trust. The CIT is the first of its kind locally. This will allow residents to invest their funds at an affordable level in a development project that will build community ownership, strengthen neighborhoods, and build empowered lives. With initial seed funding from the Kresge Foundation, the goal for this pilot is to launch in August with affordable per-month investment options for people from the community. It is, as I've seen if you're on Facebook these days, it's graduation season all over Milwaukee, and the GMC has had our own graduation celebrations in recent weeks. Scale Up Milwaukee recently graduated 25 companies from its 9th cohort of Spark, a growth accelerator program for Black, Hispanic, and women-owned businesses with annual revenue under $1 million. Collectively, these 25 companies have a combined $3 million in revenue and project 70% growth in 2024. They currently employ 88 individuals and plan to hire 75 additional employees through the end of this year. Scale Up Milwaukee will host an event this Wednesday featuring Amazon called Road Mapping Online Business to help business owners excel in the online marketplace and start selling projects and services on Amazon and other platforms. Several of you are aware of this, but we have made a decision to phase out the Scale Up initiative at the GMC at the end of the current year. For the last few months, we have been engaged in a thoughtful, intentional dialogue with other potential community partners who are likely to continue elements of the Scale Up effort, like the Spark program, and we'll announce more about that in the fall. As we turn our focus to the core issues identified in our strategic plan, We'll work to preserve important facets of the initiatives that have grown up at the GMC over the last several years, but we're going to look to do so with more involvement from the community partners, more involvement from the community and community partners rather than on our own. We think that this just makes sense as where we are as a community and where we're going. So the work that Scale Up has done within the GMC has been critically important. That was evidenced just in the graduation in the last week. And that work needs to continue in the community, but we'll do that in partnership with others in the community moving forward. Forward 48 also celebrated a graduation a few weeks ago. 80 participants from around the state of Wisconsin completed the spring session, focused on experiential learning, networking opportunities, and nonprofit board match to address the region's pressing issues. The final day included, among other things, a conversation with David Gruber, a cruise on Lake Michigan aboard the Edelweiss, and a graduation celebration with the mayor. And they had 6 other weeks that were similarly action-packed and leadership-focused. I think you see the faculty up there on the screen for this spring. We hope that you will continue to explore how your company can best leverage emerging leaders and connect the institutional knowledge between communities and generations for the success of a future Milwaukee. We've now done several cohorts within Forward 48. Really the biggest thing that we have that attracts people to the program are people who have been in the program, people who are in Milwaukee companies, people who are now doing things statewide. But the more they hear about the connections they have to existing leaders, the more that they hear about the connections to each other, the program continues to sell itself. And Ian is here representing the Hone Group and really is our true partner in this. But it is something that I think this community, as we continue to develop leaders and as we see the products of what we can do both locally and statewide with an integrated group of leaders around the state, Forward 48 is one of those things that we encourage you to continue to consider and to continue to invest in. Harvard Business School's Young American Leaders program has invited Milwaukee to send another cohort to HBS in just a few weeks. This cohort will convene with a dozen cities, with people from a dozen cities from around the nation to work on best practices for cross-sector collaboration and leadership development to increase our competitiveness in the U.S. Our local alumni network in this program now numbers just over 50, and they're making their mark individually and collectively in our community. And we look forward to seeing what this group comes back with and their ideas after they're at HBS in June. John Kissinger and Grafe continue to support these efforts financially. We truly appreciate that help. Finally, I'd like to share a brief update on Move Forward MKE Coalition that's working on public policy related to our local government in the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County. Most of you are aware that there was a breakthrough agreement late last week, and it truly represents a major milestone in the collective effort to avoid a fiscal cliff in local government here in Milwaukee. It also represents a major accomplishment from the Milwaukee business community. Here's just a couple of details about this agreement, and many of you have followed this over the last several months. But all local governments around the state of Wisconsin, and they number up to about 1,800, will receive increases in shared revenue through this agreement. That's at least a 20% increase from all of those local units of government. Milwaukee will receive a lower increase in shared revenue than other communities. Our maximum is 10%, but we also gain the ability to generate local revenue through a 2% sales tax at the city level and a 0.4% sales tax at the county level. We appreciate all of the people who have worked to ensure that these decisions will be made locally and not forcing a complicated and, I might say, expensive potential referendum on this issue. Many GMC members have also worked on reducing the funding gap between public school students and students in the parental choice program, as well as other public charter schools. As part of this agreement, and I think this is on the screen as well, you can see that non-public school students will receive increases of between 13 and 33%, narrowing that gap considerably and bringing millions more dollars in education funding for kids into the city of Milwaukee. There's also increases in student mental health, special education, so all of this as part of a global agreement. And you have seen that there may be some more legislation that is, this was kind of the broad outline, so there may be individual legislative bills that accomplish all of this, but the agreement that was announced last week truly was historic. I want to make a couple of points about this, and I have had a lot of people come up and say congratulations today, and we should be congratulating each other, but I hate to congratulate somebody in the third quarter of a game, for those of us who are in sports. So this is not, we have not yet quite gotten over the hump, and there is still some work to be done. But first, I mean, I would tell you, and I think I've said this since my first days here, I am utterly convinced that anything else that we seek to accomplish as a community is threatened if we can't provide basic services. And that is what we're on the verge of having happen here without significant additional local revenue. This package accomplishes that. Again, nothing happens, nothing is guaranteed until the legislative bodies act. State action, some will be expected this week, and for those of you who have signed up for the MKE, the Move Forward MKE Coalition, there was an email that went out this morning asking you just to one more time reach out to your local legislator, your local state representative, your local state senator. Everybody has one who lives in the state of Wisconsin, and just encourage them, because now there'll be floor action on these things at the state level, and we can't leave anything to chance. I know some of my colleagues are in Madison again today doing this. And then we're going to have to navigate our way through the Milwaukee Common Council, the county board, their processes before things are done. I would say this, that legitimate objections have been raised to elements of the state action that have the potential to limit local control, can hamstring efforts that are community-wide around DEI and building a more equitable Milwaukee. Those objections should have a community hearing. At the end of the day, our community may have to live, for the time being, with aspects that some in the community may find objectionable in order to preserve critical services that make us a world-class city. And then we have to keep working to change those things, both legislatively and in the work that we conduct personally and professionally. Finally, I hope that this is a demonstration to all of you of the influence of the business community and the Milwaukee community at large that we can still wield in Madison when we work together as a cohesive unit. The county executive and the mayor have done a tremendous job in their advocacy over the last several months. I'd also volunteer to you that Tim Sheehy and the MMAC have served a critical role. Tim's personal involvement in this, his 30-plus years of developing, cultivating relationships in Madison, really have helped steer us to the current milestone. If we can get all of this done, it will truly be part of his legacy to Milwaukee. Finally, I would say this, that this is not going to solve our community challenges, not by a long shot. We'll have more work to do. The work that we've done with the City of Milwaukee Operational Review will lay out a path for the city to operate differently, to find ways to do more than just meet basic needs, and invest in making this a more equitable and viable place for all. We still have unmet needs in areas like early childhood education, investment in the arts, infrastructure, transit. So while many have celebrated the progress we've made, and it is noteworthy, we must use it as a springboard and not a settling place. Infrastructure is a key tenet of why the GMC was created 75 years ago, in an effort to find solutions to create a first-class city infused with investments and assets that elevate the opportunities for competitiveness and success. We have a much more mature infrastructure now than we did in 1948. We still have major needs in that area, which brings us to our guests today. We've invited local partners who are finding success in their work and creating solutions. They'll cover a variety of aspects of infrastructure, including transportation, bricks and mortar, arts and culture, funding sources, and partnerships. Each speaker will share how their infrastructure plays a vital role in sustaining Milwaukee. And we'll follow it up with a table discussion and then an open forum discussion around the topic. So with that, I'm going to bring up I'm going to introduce all our guests, and I think they're going to come up individually and give their presentations. They are Chad Bauman, who's the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Repertory Theater. Just is it 10 years you've been in town now, Chad? Did I just see you celebrating? Brought to us from DC 10 years ago and has made a huge impact in this community. I'm not going to go through how long everybody else has been here because I didn't see everything else on Facebook for everybody else. Patrick Rath, who's the President and CEO of the United Performing Arts Fund. Ellen Sensky, President and CEO of the Milwaukee Public Museum, and Donna Brown Martin, who's the Director of the Milwaukee County Department of Transportation. So I would invite up our first speaker, and I think that's Patrick.
Good afternoon, and thank you. And Heather, do I use this? Okay, good. To Joel's point, I have 30 years of experience in our nonprofit community, places like the Milwaukee Art Museum, the Milwaukee Public Museum, Milwaukee Symphony, and of course the United Performing Arts Fund. So I share today some of these comments based on that perspective and what we've seen as our cultural assets have really developed over that time frame and what it took to get us to where we are. So I start first with this great gentleman. Anybody know who he is? Sorry, David. Patrick Cudahy. And the reason I'm showing Patrick Cudahy is because he was influential to our philanthropic landscape as we know today. He was the initial funder for the Greater Milwaukee Foundation well over 100 years ago and made statements that we need to come together as a collective group to really fund the assets that we have. And here's a statement that he had in his memoirs. This is what he did, and we practice this to this day, where he would put $200 in, he would go to somebody else, ask for $200, ask another $200, and eventually he would get enough dollars to create what was that vision at that moment in time. Well, as we go forward, much of that was also supplanted over many years by government funding, particularly county funding. And I show here the Milwaukee Art Museum, started first as the Milwaukee War Memorial and Art Center, and we're really where we progressed from the 1950s to where we are today. For many of you, the top right picture may be new to you. The original concept and plan incubated and thought of through the Greater Milwaukee Committee was to have a cultural campus on the lakefront. So it was to include entities like the Milwaukee Art Museum. It was to include a performing arts center, and it was to include a museum as well in that traditional space. However, funding did not match that vision and that need at that point in time, so the Arts Center as well as the War Memorial was created. On the bottom slide, you start to see the progression over time as philanthropy had a greater impact on that vision, eventually culminating to the Calatrava expansion in 2001. With all of this, we have really seen this through all of our cultural assets. So these are a few pictures here as we look back in the 1960s, which really was that moment of renaissance and build out for our community. Again, the GMC was only a few years old, but their impact was already being seen at that point in time. From the Milwaukee County Zoo on the top left-hand side, which was at that point in time proudly pronounced as a civic investment to our community. The Milwaukee Public Museum, also in the early 1960s. That is Summerfest in the bottom left-hand corner. This would not be the Summerfest event that we'd want today with all those thousands of people coming on the lakefront. And you've seen over time how that's really changed. And of course, Lady Bird Johnson with the domes when that was created. And last but not least, what we now know as the Marcus Performing Arts Center in the upper right-hand corner. And what I love about this picture, this was right at around 1969 when the building was completed. When you look to the right-hand side, you see what was the We Energies facilities there. You do not see the Associated Bank Tower that we know of today. MGIC did not have their footprint as they do right now with Red Arrow Park. And also you don't see the 1000 North building. What we've done over time as we've made these investments in cultural assets, so much growth has happened around our city at the same time. But these are all led and continue led by government sources for that point. The last few years, the arts have also seen a renaissance. About 50 years post, places like the Bradley Symphony Center, the Milwaukee Youth Arts Center, and as of course, the Milwaukee Ballet Center for Dance. And we'll talk soon about Chad's wonderful work with the Associated Bank Theater Center. All of this has been built predominantly through philanthropic support. It's an investment, an important investment in our community. But what we do is that we're very good at building the infrastructure we have. And the question is, how do we continue to maintain this as we go forward, as much as we've all discussed as a group to date. So physical infrastructure is on the left-hand side. So I argue that we really have two types of infrastructure that we have to look at and prepare for as we're looking at these constructive projects. Physical infrastructure we do very well. Operational infrastructure is that long-term need. What has happened as we've moved more into projects being fully funded through philanthropy, we get to the build, we don't get to the sustaining part. And what does that look like for the future? So whereas civic and government resources have maybe been paved the way for what we have today, philanthropy is the question as we go forward and what impact that will have. We'll compare a few cities here, anywhere from Minneapolis to Indianapolis. Those cities, their cultural assets do not number what we have in Milwaukee. But at the same time, they have a much stronger infrastructure, operational infrastructure for the future. That's because they were born out of philanthropy to start with. So people continue to invest in those entities. When I showed the public museum just a minute ago, they didn't charge admission until the 1980s. So really, we delayed so much of that general community support for decades, where many of these institutions, when they started their projects in the 1920s and 1930s, was philanthropic born. So the question we have today is from the UPATH members: as much as we have this great collection and ecosystem of arts organizations, we only have $23 million of long-term investment. Compare that to Minneapolis, over $100 million, as well as government support. That's about 5% of revenue. So one of the challenges have been our arts organizations know what that future is. They want to reach for that healthy future. The challenge has been we're still managing through the COVID timeframe. We continue to make strides through that, and by next year we expect that our deficits will be closing that gap from an operating perspective, and we should have a bright future from that point in time. How do we invest is going to be the question. So as we look at this healthy revenue mix, I point out just two areas here. The government line right now, our arts and cultural organizations receive about 1% of the revenue mix from government support. Wisconsin is 50th out of 50 states in terms of support for arts and culture. That's about 14 cents per resident. For us to move to 49, we'd have to double that to 28 cents. Our friends in Minnesota is $7 per resident. That is a big gap for us to have a healthy revenue mix. We put more pressure on philanthropic resources because we do not have this balance. And the same thing we see again with its investment returns, that is putting pressure on our future as well. So how do we look to the future? Who knows this individual? Many people do, Mackenzie Scott. We don't see her in town, but she's been the single leading investor in our community in the last 2 years, over $54 million invested. She is also reflective of what our current donor practices in our community, really investing in what our future is by raising up everybody and being representative in that philanthropy. A very good thing for us. However, we now have 11,000 nonprofits in our community, and that stress is becoming more and more great and acute as we spread that wealth to all these institutions. This is an example from the Wisconsin Philanthropy Network. You see on the far left-hand side, when surveyed all the funders across the state, their focus is on capacity building, which makes a lot of sense for the moment in time we live today. However, the far right-hand side shows where the increases are for continuation funding. It is becoming less and less important where we fund those institutions and those priority programs that have been built. In fact, we're looking to support capital campaigns in the future more so than sustaining revenues that we've seen in the past. So I'm going to leave with this slide here as we go forward. I think we're going to hear that from some great speakers today. How do we sustain what we build? And also looking at the cultural assets that we have, they are essential. Having a balance between our civic responsibility to sustain those assets as well as invest in the opportunities that will propel our community going forward. And a great example of that is Chad Bauman and his leadership with the Milwaukee Rep. So I'm going to turn over to Chad to talk about his project as he has lived this for the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick and GMC, for having me here this afternoon to give an update on Milwaukee Repertory Theater. Milwaukee Rep today is the largest performing arts organization in the state of Wisconsin, serving 300,000 people at 700 performances in 4 different venues. In the United States, there are 1,900 professional theaters, and Milwaukee Rep is in the top 10. But we have a problem with our historic building. We know that our historic building started as the Oneida Street Power Station in 1898. It was a phenomenal gift from We Energies to us in the early 1980s, which we then used to convert into a multi-theater complex that has been our home for the last 4 decades. We have decided to remain committed to downtown Milwaukee and to continue to use this historic preserved building for decades to come. In our 70 years here serving Wisconsin and Milwaukee, we've had many critical moments of transformation, and 3 times we have outgrown our facility, and that's where we find ourselves again. When our building opened in 1987, 2 other iconic Milwaukee buildings opened the same year. That is the Bradley Center and the Marcus Amphitheater, both of which have been re-envisioned for the future. We drive a significant portion of Milwaukee's creative economy. Out of the 14 member groups, if you combine all of their performances, Milwaukee Rep presents more than 1/3 of those performances, driving $30 million of economic impact in downtown Milwaukee every year. And the theater is growing, and growing significantly. In the last decade, Milwaukee Rep has doubled in size, and over those last 10 years, we have not realized a single deficit budget, so we're doing so sustainably. We also are one of the leading providers of arts education in the Midwest, serving 20,000 students from more than 250 different schools across the state. So here's where we're at with our campaign to date. We've raised $53 million from 250 donors plus. We are trying to get to $60 million by the end of June so that we can put shovels in the ground come 2024. And if you're counting, that's less than 3 weeks. So if you all have your checkbooks, I'll be standing by the door as you leave. Here's one of our big challenges, though, and it goes to a point that Patrick was making. This project has $0 in public funding to date. That's because the state of Wisconsin, as Patrick said, is the last among all 50 states in per capita support for the arts in Wisconsin. We are also the last of the top 60 DMAs for city support and county support as well. That goes back in part to the shared revenue challenges that Joel was mentioning earlier. At the national level, there's congressional directed spending requests that are back, but the House of Representatives has purposely excluded arts and culture, so it's a challenge on the federal level as well. If we miss the June 30 deadline, then we have to delay the project for a year. And the inflationary environment that we're in, that means it's a $6 million added cost, so the project cost goes up to $84 million. But the thing that keeps me up at night is that our chances of a catastrophic building failure in the middle of one of our seasons really ramps up. So think about the HVAC system failing in January when it's negative 20 degrees outside. I want to introduce you here, and they say if I click this button, the video will play, to what our new home, the Associated Bank Theater Center, will look like. Oh, there you go. Welcome to our new entrance off Well Street, where patrons can access our theaters on the ground floor and drop off vehicles for valet. Patrons will enter the Hack Grand Lobby, which is a 3-floor gathering space built off of our historic building. The Hack Grand Lobby will unite for the first time all theaters and public spaces and provide easy access to all spaces for persons with disabilities. The Hertzfeld Foundation Education and Engagement Center will help us serve 30,000 students and community members annually with dedicated space to our training and student programs, including a performance space and individual classrooms. The Studio Theater will have a magnificent new lobby connected to a fully flexible performance space in which audience seating can change depending upon the needs of individual productions. Heading to the second floor of the Hack Lobby, patrons can enjoy many amenities, such as coat check, gift shop, bars, ample seating, and event spaces that can be used for pre-show and post-show events. From the second level, patrons will enter the back of the orchestra level of the Powerhouse Theater. The Powerhouse Theater will be the first and only theater in the United States that can convert from a thrust to a proscenium audience configuration, making Milwaukee Rep's flagship theater compatible with every theater in the world, giving us the ability to move our productions to Broadway and beyond. Moving to the third level, you can see the beautiful skylight that will connect our historic building to our lobby. On this level, patrons can access the Stackner Cabaret and Powerhouse Theater balcony. Additionally, it will feature a stunning Lubar Family Donors Lounge with the capacity to serve 125 people with private restrooms, bar, and food service. An evening at the Associated Bank Theater Center will be a memory to cherish for decades of theater lovers to come. quick shout out to EUA, who's brilliantly designed this building, and to my buddy over here, John Hunsinger, whose company will build it very, very well for the city. I also just want to say thank you to the 100+ volunteer leaders, many of who are in this room, that have made this campaign possible, and to the many generous donors that are here as well. Together, we will ensure that Milwaukee has a world-class theater for decades to come. At this time, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ellen Sinsky, who will talk about our amazing new Milwaukee Public Museum.
Thank you so much for inviting me. So it has been said that our cultures shape how we work and how we play, and it makes a difference in how we view ourselves and others. It actually affects our values, and it affects, in turn, what we as a community invest in. MPM has been part of this community and part of the fabric of this community for 141 years. And I would say that MPM has, because it's been open to the public for that entire time, welcoming everyone in, it has, in fact, been helping to shape how we view ourselves and others, and potentially how we invest in things in this community. MPM has been around a long time, but it hasn't been the same institution for that entire time. We began in 1882 as a department of the city, founded as a department of the city, and we operated as a department of the city until the mid-70s, when the city decided and concluded that we actually served many more people than just the city itself. So in 1976, the county purchased the museum from the city for $10 million, and the museum operated as a county department until 1992, when the county and the museum both decided that the best course forward for the museum would be to have it operate as a separate 501c3, because we needed to raise significant dollars through the donor community. The county would, however, retain the ownership of the collections, and the county would retain ownership of the building and would continue to perform the maintenance on the building. And the museum would operate with a lease and management agreement in the county. And of course, we all know what happened with county funding over the past 30 years. As that county funding decreased, so did the funding towards the operations of the museum. At the same time, the deferred maintenance in the museum started to pile up. And in fact, we now have significant deferred maintenance, in fact, to the tune of nearly $100 million on the building. Our accreditation was at risk because of our inability to care for the collections in this building, and our visitor experience was also being impacted. We have shut down exhibits because of leaky ceilings. We have, in fact, in the last month, we've had the escalator, 2 different escalators, go out, and those parts are no longer manufactured. So they have to be specially made, and so those things really impact the visitor experience. So MPM is at a turning point in its history. And in 2015 and 2016, MPM commissioned 2 different studies to actually look at what options we had: staying in the building and repairing it, or moving to and building a new museum. The studies concluded that the only viable option was to build a new museum, because the county couldn't afford to do those kinds of repairs on the building, and there was no appetite in the community for donors to provide that kind of significant input into a county facility. Thus, we are building a new museum that will be owned by the museum, but the county will still own the collections, and they'll be held in trust for all of you. So we are in the midst of another transition of this museum. And with each step in our evolution, we have reinvented our model for operating and who we partner with. but we have never strayed from our role in this community of being an educational and research institution. Our first school visits to the museum were back in 1887, and we have had a continuous stream of kids through our doors since that time. Our collections predate the opening of the museum, and we began conducting scientific research shortly after we opened our first doors. And we have been enriching this community and the world as a result of that new knowledge that we have been generating and will continue to generate. So, how are we going to reinvent our operational model while remaining true to our mission and to the impact that we've had in this community? Well, our first step was to determine what this project was going to cost. And it is a significant dollar amount. So once we determined that, we did a feasibility study to first of all understand, could we do this? What kind of partners would we need? And of course, was there an appetite in this community for this kind of project? It became very clear to us when we started into this study that the only way that this could happen would be for it to be a public-private venture and to expand our reach across the state. We actually felt that we could do this because MPM is the most visited museum in this state. We get more than 500,000 visitors who come to us from every single county in this state and beyond. We also have school groups who visit us from 44 of the 72 counties in this state. And of course, those collection items come from every single county in this state. So we felt that we could and should partner with the state because we do serve the entire state. Those collections will still be owned by the county, so we felt that the county needed to have a stake in this project too. And we also felt that we could expand our philanthropic campaign out across the state because, again, we reach out across the state. So we knew that we needed to secure public funding first in order to give the donors in the community the confidence that this project would actually succeed. So given that the state's biennial budget it's a biennial budget, 2 years ago we started working with the state and we were able to secure $40 million towards the project from the state. And the reason for that is all of those legislators who came to visit the museum and came on tours to see the condition of it, all of them had been to the museum as kids. They brought their kids to the museum, and we could also share with them the objects and collections that came from their districts. The next year, we approached the county and we were able to secure $45 million in county funding in March of last year. And of course, we kicked off our capital campaign last July when we were finally able to show the renderings of what this new museum would look like. So throughout each step in this process, we have remained true to the vision of the founders of the museum, which was to be a museum made by the people for the people of this state. We have engaged with thousands of community citizens through town halls, through listening sessions, and surveys to understand what people love about the current institution and what they want to see in the new institution. We've also been engaged with source communities. You know, we hold collections, 4 million objects that come from around the world and across Wisconsin, and we want to share their stories authentically from their voices. So we've been working with Wisconsin's tribes as well as reaching out to communities across the world, from the Sami to the Ainu to the Quechua to Hopi, Maasai. We've been reaching out to many, many groups to share their stories in their voices in the new museum. So this project is not just a bricks and mortar project. This is a project that also protects for future generations those 4 million objects that represent the cultural and natural history of this city and of this state. and that connects us to the rest of the world through those exhibits and through our programming. And this is a project that helps to preserve the research function of this institution for the community and for the world. And this is where we are in this timeline. We are on schedule to break ground early next year. And when we break ground early next year, that puts us on target to open the new museum in late 26 or early 27. So when we open the doors to that new museum, we will be celebrating our 145th anniversary of being a museum that is made by the people of this state, for the people of this state. And we will continue to help shape how we view ourselves and others, and potentially what we invest in as a community. Thank you, and I'd like to invite Donna Brown Martin up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and committee for inviting me to speak today. I'm sure many of you have heard about Milwaukee County Transit's financial situation, and that's been outlined in the Wisconsin Public Forum, but we are still here. And I want to just talk to you a little bit about not only transit, but transportation in general within Milwaukee County. So bus rapid transit. We also last week on Monday opened and did the ribbon cutting for our bus rapid transit. MCTS Connect 1 BRT route on Wisconsin and Blue Mound is an incredible project that we are very excited about. We have a number of people who have may not have experienced transit before, but they have experienced bus rapid transit as part of that process. The route goes through Wisconsin, Blue Mound, and heads up to all the way out to the Couture, which ultimately is the location where they'll also have a hub at one time. We also have rail, expansion of Amtrak services throughout the state. Twin Cities, Milwaukee, Chicago is due at the end of 2023. Plans for passenger rail between Milwaukee and Madison are, again, really important interconnective activities for us. Milwaukee Airport, expansion of Concourse E at Mitchell Airport for international travel is being pursued. We have a design plan for that. International travel out at Milwaukee has been delayed because of the small facility that we have there. If anyone has come in through Milwaukee, through the international station there, you know that it kind of looks like a Russian 1960s building, a lot of orange carpeting and green furniture. So well overdue for Concourse E to be taken care of. And we're very excited about submitting our proposal to FAA in this coming year, this coming summer. Microtransit, Flex Ride Milwaukee. Many of you are aware of Mobilease and the work that they have been doing. They started in Menominee Falls and have expanded to Franklin, and we are very excited to say that they are an active partner with Milwaukee County Transit to ensure that the first and last mile of any trip is followed through on. So what's the takeaway on this? Well, the takeaway is that robust transportation and transit systems enhance connectivity and job access while expanding job candidate pools. That's extremely important. It's not just that we provide a service to the overall community. provide a service to the community through economic development, as well as also through businesses who utilize us to ensure that their staff, their workers, and their clients get to the facility. So why should transit matter to everyone? Well, job access. More jobs are made accessible and residents across the county. Less traffic. Quality transit takes more cars off the road. Efficiency. The more people use transit, the more cost-effective it becomes. Wheel tax. Your vehicle registration fee helps fund transit. So ride it. Utilize the service. Quality of life. Predictable and consistent transit service improves everyone's lives. Environment. Less pollutants emit less fuel needed. Public health. Less stress commuting frees up time, and riders walk more. Those who can't or don't want to drive have more mobility, more freedom. So bus rapid transit is a high-quality bus-based system that delivers fast and efficient service that may include dedicated lanes, traffic signal priority, off-board fare collection, elevated platforms, and enhanced stations. With the right features, BRT is able to avoid the delays that can slow regular bus service, like being stuck in traffic and queuing to pay on board. BRT's total capital cost was about $5 million. Light rail, in comparison, is closer to $100 million. So it's a very cost-effective way to utilize the service that's already out there, that's highly utilized, and keep people moving forward throughout the county. So our Connect is called Milwaukee County's East-West BRT. All the things that I talked about, that the stations, the new electric buses, the bus-only lanes, all enhance that access. So the next route that we're looking at is the north-south bus rapid transit in 27th Street. 27th Street currently is the purple line for our corridor. This would be a study recommended between Bayshore to Drexel, more than 15 miles. And we're excited about it because it really provides engineering design and an environmental process for us to really expand bus rapid transit and make the connectivity at Wisconsin Avenue and 27th Street so that people get to where they need to go as quickly as possible within 10 to 15 minutes in terms of headways. It's an accepted project by FTA, and it's a government project that starts us off, and they can help us fund up to 80% of the project. So as I said, MCTS is approaching a fiscal cliff. It's what's been told to everyone in this room. Pandemic funding supplemented lost revenue for MCTS from 2020 to 2024. The state will likely move forward with a possible 4% increase in mass transit aids. We'll know once we get through joint finance. We're also looking at MCTS budget gap is estimated to be between about $32 million annually as a direct result of increased operating costs and pension obligations. If that funding is not restored or replaced, catastrophic cuts are coming. MCTS already has cut all its freeway flyer routes, most school routes, and employee shuttle routes, service to brewer games and summer festivals. Under the proposal, 16 routes would be eliminated, 10,000 riders could be impacted, 2,100 employers could lose transit service, and 74,000 workers lose access to service. So that sounds pretty dire, and it is. It is kind of dire, but we're not here to give up on our service or on the service that we're providing to the community. MCTS has been around quite a long time, and we have been pretty successful in maintaining and keeping it an efficient, safe way for people to travel throughout the county. And we hope to be able to continue to do that. I am pretty happy about the move forward in terms of the shared revenue. It gives a window of opportunity for us to continue to work with the county and city to ensure that we are be able to keep the service moving. And I have every intention as the director of Milwaukee County Department of Transportation of making sure that that's something that we can do. So how can you help? Write, call, visit your state representative and state senators, of course. Urge your county supervisors and alderpersons to do the same. Encourage transit as part of your organization's array of transportation options, and urge others to do the same. Use it. Use transit when you can. I actually use it coming from the Watertown Plank Road out by the medical center, and I use it to get down to the courthouse. Can do it in 18 minutes. I'm looking to get it down to 14. And, and that's what we strive to do. The app also helps you. You can use your iPhone, your cell phone to do that. You can pay before you get on the bus. And in the wintertime, when you're trying to use our bus rapid transit stations, those pads are heated. It's going to be a great way to get onto the bus without slipping on salt. So we hope that you'll utilize the system, experiment, and please be vocal. Tell us what you think of the service and of the system and how you think we're doing. Another just quick piece of information to help you further put into place how transportation is working within the county. Complete Communities Transportation Planning Project. We received federal funding to assist with reckless driving here in the county. We're looking at each of the 19 municipalities going and holding public information meetings, talking with the communities to talk about how to best address reckless driving in their neighborhoods, in their communities. Because what is good here in Milwaukee is not necessarily good in St. Francis or Cudahy or Oak Creek. Everyone is skilled and knowledgeable about their areas, and so we want to capitalize on that. So I've been asked, I've pulled through this pretty quickly, but I've been asked to help talk about a potential set of study questions to get the group really started. Is this the good time to start through this? So how do we understand how to connect transit in the workforce? What are the barriers to accessing jobs that transit riders experience? We just want to pose these questions out here and see if we might be able to get some feedback, some input from you, the business community, to help us make sure that we're meeting the right goals for our efforts. Any answers? What role does GMC and business community play in transportation advocacy? Yes.
All right, hate to interrupt great dialogue. I've been given the wonderful task of wrapping up, but I have to tell you, at the end of my wrap-up, these are going to 2 people, so don't leave. Must be present to win. So before I wrap up, just if anybody we'll take 1 or 2 comments, or if you have a question based on the conversations you were having at your table, be happy to do it. Oh, wow. I was gonna say, I hope I don't have to run around with a mic because I don't know where it is.
This is for Donna. Just a question. I saw the north-south map and had Northwestern Mutual on there. And now we know that Northwestern Mutual is bringing its employees back from their Franklin campus. Will that impact moving the north-south BRT at all? Is there a conversation about perhaps having it go just similar to how it goes to Bayshore Mall? Will it go to Drexel Town Square, or any sort of insight on that?
Heather gets her steps in on meeting day, by the way.
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, Northwestern Mutual is moving back downtown, but that still presents opportunities for us at Drexel Town Center and along the area in Oak Creek and in Franklin, and we're very excited about exploring those with those communities and identifying how we might make those changes.
Thank you. One more. Anybody else? Comment, question? I would have been disappointed if you didn't have one, Dan.
Peggy, Dan Steininger. One thing we've agreed on, some of this information is we've learned for the first time today that we're 50th in the nation. 50th. I mean, that's pretty depressing. And I know Greg over at MJS is letting us know the bad news as much as he can, but maybe that ought to be publicized throughout the state. How do you feel about the fact that your state is the last in the nation in these funding things? That might move some legislators in Madison. I don't know, it's just a thought, but we shouldn't come to a meeting like this to learn things that the whole state should know. So, there you go.
Thank you. Great comment. We were discussing at our table, too, the value of increasing our collective education. And if we think about our strategic plan, one of the things we recognized with respect to our strategic priorities is they start first with education. And so with every one of our priorities, you're going to see us bringing education to you, but also those of us who want to take action, taking our own educational opportunities off to the side, bringing things to the members, because we all know that until we're educated, we can't possibly determine what the right steps are going forward. So I want to thank all of you for attending today's meeting and welcoming me as board chair. I very much appreciate the outlook from our presenters for how we define and frankly how we prioritize infrastructure, and that idea that we think of infrastructure a little differently than perhaps we typically do. And thank you for all you're doing to make Milwaukee the best place to live, work, learn, play, and stay for all. Reinvesting in mature infrastructure, supporting the deserved growth of others, and reimagining a highly dependable infrastructure are all tasks we can prioritize once we organize our assets and our collective vision. We are truly at a pivotal moment for Milwaukee's future, and it is efforts like those of the speakers we heard from today, coupled with our organized support, that are going to create large-scale, tangible, and sustainable outcomes for our community. There are many areas in which our members can create action to advance this work. We hope today's presentations and the table conversation highlighted just a few of those areas, and we look forward to discovering and implementing many others as we operationalize our strategic plan. One thing I wanted to point out that came up at our table was the question of the Summerfest routes, and we had a good discussion of that. So the Summerfest routes are still there. So for those of you coming down to Summerfest, do not fret. We still have Summerfest routes for you. As a reminder, we do not meet in July or August, and we will convene in September, so enjoy your summer. Before we head out, this might have to become a thing, Joel. I don't know. I can't do a door prize at my first meeting and then just leave it at that. But we'll see. We want to help you kick off your summer in the right way by giving away 2 Summerfest. It says gift baskets, but they're bags, so I'm going to say gift bags that include tickets. This 80s high school grad is so excited, although I didn't win. So 2 tickets to Styx and Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, come on now. Come on. This is just amazing. So I've been given 2 random names from the list of today's attendees. And when I announce your name, please feel free to come on up and grab your bag. Patrick O'Brien. Patrick, where are you? Uh-oh. There you are. There you are. That's right. Thank you. And this side of the room must be lucky because Kelly Grebe, you won the other one. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thanks for being here.